Hi guys, it's Steph here from the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new, every week I recap what I have read in the last 7 days, and that is basically the point of this video. I'm going to confess I am very tired. I haven't stopped for 2 weeks. I've got to film 3 videos and then I've got to do some homework for tomorrow, but essentially then I can sort of slow down a little bit, but if I seem a little bit flat, I do apologise. It's just because I am quite overtired, and part of that's because the flow on from being out at VidCon for 2 days and also just a whole lot of things that are going on at work. So do bear with me. This is my reading wrap up from the 2nd to the 8th of September. I read 8 books this week and I have absolutely no idea how I managed to do that since I read 3 of them on Saturday, which was just mental. I read a total of 2,574 pages and my yearly reading total is up to 176 books. So I was reading while I was at VidCon. I took my Kindle and I was basically reading paranormal romance because I was very tired, and paranormal romance is my go-to for when I'm basically just feeling flat and I need something quick and easy to read. I think I mentioned last week that I was reading books from Nalini Singh's Changeling series, so I managed to read 3 more of those books, books 2, 3 and 4. So book number 2 is Visions of Heat. That was published in 2010 by Galance. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. It was not the greatest. I think I did mention that I think I prefer the Guild Hunter series, but it's kind of hard to justify that when I've read 10 books in one series and only 4 on the other, but you know. Visions of Heat follows Vaughn, who is a leopard changeling. No. Well, he's one of the cat changelings, I forget which one he is. And Faith, who is a Psy who has the gift of foresight. What I liked about this book in particular was the insight that we get into the different cultures. So even though we're following characters who are basically working within the changeling world, we actually get to see a little bit of the Psynet, which is sort of the mental telepathic link that all of the Psys have, as well as the inner workings of the Psy Council and sort of the political goings on, which was really intriguing. Vaughn and Faith were kind of... I really like Faith, but she was a little bit insipid at some points, and yeah, Vaughn was not my favourite. So the romance side fell a little bit flat, but the actual intrigue and sort of the mystery plot that was going on, I did really enjoy. The 3rd book is Caressed by Ice. That was published in 2011 by Galance, and I gave that 4 out of 5 stars. This is probably my favourite of the books that I've read so far. This time we follow characters in the Wolf Changeling Pact. So Brenna, who was a character in the 1st book series who was involved in sort of the main plot and is quite broken and emotionally traumatized from the events that she went through in that book, is now the main character, and she's a wolf changeling. And then we also have Judd, who is an exiled Psy who escaped before Sasha, and he's got quite a mysterious sort of past. He was a Psy soldier and is quite violent and quite dangerous. It's about him finding his place now that he's no longer part of the Psy network, and it's about the developing relationship between himself and Brenna, and the sort of mystery plot focuses on a traitor within the wolf pack, and that was really interesting and sort of suspenseful too, which I really liked and appreciated. Book 4 was Mind to Possess. That was also published in 2011 by Galance. I think I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm saying I think a lot because it's a little bit fuzzy in my head. It follows Clay, who is one of the cat changelings. I think he is a leopard. I think. I'm very confused. There's too many different cats in this pact. Anyway, and it's to do with his relationship with a human woman named Talon, who he knew many years before and had thought was dead, and she comes back into his life. And she's trying to track down a teenager who she cared for. She's a social worker and she was looking after a group of kids, and some of these kids have gone missing, and she enlists Clay and his pack's help to try and find out who has them and the reason they've been taken. So that's my paranormal romance spin. I also read a book for review from NetGalley, and that was How to Fracture a Fairy Tale by Jane Yolen. This is a collection of fairy tales, obviously, and there's a whole stack of them in this book, and she has manipulated them a little bit to tell the story in a different way. And I really like reading retellings and fractured fairy tales. I think it's really interesting to get different authors' perspectives on traditional tales, and there was a whole stack in here that I had never heard of. This has really put me into the frame of mind that perhaps I don't know as many traditional fairy tales or traditional tales from different cultures as I perhaps think I do. And this is highlighted more by another book that I'm going to talk about in a minute. There were quite a few stories that I really enjoyed. There was some Cinderella stories that I really liked. There was one that I think might have Asian roots, and it was about three brothers trying to save their mother, and there's dragons involved, and it was just wonderful. But it was just really interesting to read different takes on the fairy tales. So I did give that 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's due to be published, I think, in the US on the 15th of November by Tachyon Publishing. So it's well worth checking out if you like. And apparently Jane Yolen is highly prolific, and I had no idea who she was, but apparently she's written tons and tons of books. So I think it's well worth checking out. And it was a nice way to be introduced to her writing. Then I read The Wolf Hour by Sarah Miles. This was sent to me unsolicited for review by Alan Unwin, and I'm very grateful to them for doing that. This is a 2018 release, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It is a thriller-ish sort of book. So we begin with Tessa, who is a young woman in her 20s. She is working in Uganda and researching the effects of PTSD on child soldiers. Her older brother also is working in Africa in quite a suspicious occupation, and her parents are back home in Australia. Tessa decides to join a delegation who are trying to negotiate in peace talks, and while she is in that camp, she meets a young child soldier named Francis. But when the talks stall, Tessa is kidnapped and held captive by some of the rebel soldiers, and it is the story of how this event affects her family, and her parents eventually get in contact with her brother and get him to head to Uganda to try and track her down, but his reasons for doing so are perhaps less than altruistic. It is really how this family deals with both Tessa and Stephen's decisions and how they either overcome or don't overcome them. This was really deeply atmospheric, and I don't read a lot of books set in Africa, and this was quite, and I suppose this was quite enlightening to think about from a different perspective, because you are talking about child soldiers. There's some trigger warnings in here for rape, so just be aware of that going into it as well. The writing is really good. It didn't take me too long to get into the story. The only thing I'll say is the ending was a bit abrupt, and it just sort of stopped suddenly. But aside from that, it was a really great look at family dynamic in traumatic circumstances, and what would you do to keep your children safe as well, and what sacrifices would you make. So I did really enjoy this. It's not something I necessarily would have picked up on my own, but I'm glad that I had the opportunity to read it. Then I read The Singing Bones by Shaun Tan. This was published in 2015 by Alan and Unwin, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. When I read How to Fracture a Fairy Tale, that was coming off the back of reading Fairy Tales for Feisty Girls, and so this is the third sort of fairy tale reimagining, retelling collection that I have read in 2 weeks, and I don't know, this is kind of weird for me. I love Shaun Tan's books. I mean, just have a look at this cover. It is absolutely stunning and eye-catching. And what this is a collection of excerpts from fairy tales with images that have been created by Shaun Tan, and they're not artwork. He's actually created clay sculptures for each excerpt, and it is just stunning. So you have so for example, this is Hansel and Gretel. So you have an excerpt on this page. You probably can't see it very well. And then you have Shaun Tan's clay sculpture to match the text, and it's just a different way of looking at a fairy tale and sort of taking the essence of it and distilling it down to one image, and it's beautiful, and I adore his work, but this just took it to a new level, and I think this will be one of my favorite fairy tale collections for a while. And there is a foreword by Philip Pullman, who was involved in this project. Because you only get like one tiny little snippet of each fairy tale, at the back there is sort of a summary of all the different traditional tales that are in here, and there are some that I had not heard of, some that I had read in How to Fracture a Fairy Tale, and so I got a little bit more perspective on them in this one as well, which was really, really nice, and probably a good way to read it. But yes, this is a beautiful book. If you ever need to get someone who's interested in fairy tales and traditional tales a beautiful coffee table book, I would suggest this one. The last 2 books that I read this week were for the Tome Infinity and Beyond Challenge, which started on the 7th of September, and because I've been so tired, I have managed to stuff up the order in which I was reading these books already. So I'm having to do a little bit of damage control, but that's okay, because I can sort that out and catch up and get to where I'm supposed to be, hopefully. So I decided to start with Ship D, which took me to the asteroid belt, and I was reading The Loneliest Girl in the Universe by Lauren James. This was published in 2017 by Walker Books, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The Loneliest Girl in the Universe is a young adult science fiction thriller book, and it was very, very creepy, and I was on the edge of my seat for a very long time. I was actually sitting in the hairdresser's salon reading this for a good hour or so, and I got through quite a bit of it, which is why I read so many books on the weekend. Romy Silvers is the only surviving member of a long-term space flight mission to inhabit a new Earth-like planet. She was originally traveling with her parents and a crew, but something has happened to all of them and she's been left on her own, and sort of what happened to them is a thread that follows throughout the whole story and is sort of unraveled really slowly. Romy was actually born in space, so she has never set foot on Earth, and she's had to learn everything in the short time that she was with her parents, but she's been alone for, I think, maybe 8 or 9 years at the point that this book commences. And she has just been notified that Earth has sent a second ship with another person so that she won't be alone as she journeys to this new planet. And their only communication is via email because they're so far apart from one another. Being YA, there is a little bit of a romance, and it is kind of insta-love, but I think in the circumstances it is quite understandable because Romy has been alone for such a long period of time, and suddenly she's communicating with this person who she doesn't know. She doesn't know what he looks like. She doesn't know who he is except what she is told via email. And so that is where some of the elements of the thriller are woven in, and then there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on in the background, including potential upheaval on Earth and communication being cut off with her home planet, and this feeling of isolation. And you know, there are times when I thought this was going in a different direction, and I'm kind of glad it didn't, although it still would have been a really good storyline, but I was really surprised by this and I did enjoy it. So definitely worth checking out. And then because I stuffed up and thought my Tome Infinity path was taking me to Venus instead of the asteroid belt, I picked up my book for a strong female character, and that was Star Wars Rebel Rising by Beth Revis. This focuses on Jyn. It was published in 2017 by Lucasfilm Press, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. We're going to ignore the fact that I apparently cannot follow a TBR path in a readathon challenge and just accept that this will slot in somewhere. I really enjoyed this. I love Star Wars books, but I can find them sometimes dry and sometimes difficult to get into, but this one I was into it straight away, and I think it might be because of where it sort of sits between the other Rogue One books and the film itself, because I really enjoyed reading Catalyst. I think I read it maybe 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and sort of getting the backstory for Galen Erso and his family. And this picks up right from where that one finishes and takes us up to the point where we meet Jyn in Rogue One. So we really get to unpack her character and how she's grown up amongst Saw Gerrera's rebels and how all of the pieces fit together. And I think it was really good to read this after I'd also read Inferno Squad. Everything's sort of slotted into place for me. So this really is Jyn's story, and it's about her growing up, her understanding what Saw is all about. It's also about her falling in love for the first time. It's about her being betrayed and about her falling into Imperial hands and having to then escape. There's quite a lot going on. Beth Revis has a really great writing style. It was so easy to read. I really appreciated that. Jyn is still definitely a strong female character for me, so I'm glad that I read it. So those are the books that I read this week. This week I'm planning on fixing up my Tome Infinity TBR path, if I can. And I'm also vlogging on my Insta story, so I will leave my Instagram username down below. Definitely come and check it out. I'm not going to video vlog because it's just too much work, but I am checking in and sort of sharing what's going on my Insta story. So if you're interested in that, definitely come and join me and let me know that you're there. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.